Chapter 4 The Opening Act of Despair 1. Cocytus's footsteps fell heavily on his way to the throne room. As if his mood had infected the minions following him, their steps were also dark and weighty. Their mood was appropriate after suffering defeat at the hands of the Lizardmen. Cocytus had commanded the shining army of Nazarick, but all he had reaped was loss and ignominy. Certainly Cocytus thought highly of the Lizardmen. Created to be a samurai, no, to be a warrior, he was inclined to respect skilled fighters. But those were two different things. There was no way a Nazarick defeat would be forgiven, and this was no happenstance defensive skirmish. It was their first military expedition. Anyone would be displeased if that glorious first battle was met with failure. Of course, it was true he'd been given a corps of weaklings, and he remembered what Demiurge had said, but that was nothing more than an excuse. Even if his master had considered the possibility of defeat, surely victory was best. Soon enough, the throne room was in front of him, and the room leading to it, Lemegeton, the lesser key of Solomon, came into view. As he neared it, his feet grew even more leaden, to the point where he wanted to believe it was some kind of magic trap. He hoped his master would reprimand him. It would be his pleasure to wipe away the shame, whether his life was taken or he was ordered to commit suicide. What Cocytus feared most was that his lord would give up on him entirely. If he were to be discarded by the last remaining supreme being, what would he do? Cocytus considered himself a sword, a weapon in his master's hand that cut down everything it was told to, so there could not be a fate more horrible than being deemed unnecessary and useless. Not only that, but if the other guardians were forsaken due to his actions, how could he possibly atone?
There would be no way to apologize. If it came to that, my death alone would not be enough.
What's more,
if our master became disappointed and left this land like the other supreme beings, what would we do?
Cocytus shuddered. He had perfect resistance against chill, so naturally his shivers were not from the cold. He was tormented by a mental pressure severe enough to make a human vomit.
That would never happen. Lord Ainz wouldn't abandon us.
The last supreme one to remain, after all the others had left the tomb. He was their highest ruler, an absolute leader. Their lord, so deeply compassionate, would never forsake them. But no matter how much Cocytus comforted himself, persistent voices in the back of his head countered that there was no proof he wouldn't. Cocytus arrived at Lemegeton. Normally there wasn't anyone in this room besides the golems and the crystal monsters, but today there were many. 4 guardians, Demiurge, Aura, Mare, Shalltear, and several elite minions they had selected to accompany them. Their gazes gathered on Cocytus, and for a moment, out of guilt, his expression registered distress. He felt like they were blaming him for the loss.
No,
thought Cocytus.
Maybe they're right.
His thoughts from before crossed his mind again.
They might all think that way.
When he looked at them, he could feel the wordless reproach in their eyes.
Sorry I'm late. Even Demiurge managed to get here on time, and he was outside.
No, don't worry about it, Demiurge answered as the group's representative. It was his usual voice, and Cocytus couldn't sense any negativity in it, but Demiurge was an ingenious guardian with excellent control over his emotions, and a talent for hiding his true feelings. Cocytus couldn't tell if he was displeased or not. In that sense, one could say the Demiurge who had been watching over the previous battle between Ainz and Shalltear was a rare form of him. Of course, his distress was also a sign of his loyalty. Anyhow, I told the others, but I'll be standing in for Albedo as guardian representative today. Any objections?
No, I have no problems with you representing us.
Albedo was standing in for Sebas as their master's assistant, so she wasn't present. Good. We're waiting for one more, and then we'll enter the throne room. But first, considering Albedo's absence, we'll have a meeting regarding how to line up for our audience. Really, we should rehearse, but there's no time, so we'll omit that and proceed with only spoken explanation. Listen closely. Each guardian and minion acknowledged Demiurge, including Cocytus. He did wonder whom they were waiting for, though, since everyone seemed to already be there. His uncertainty vanished in a moment when he detected a single presence headed in their direction. When he turned toward it, he saw a grotesque being floating toward Lemegeton. It looked like a fetus. No, perhaps embryo was more accurate. It had a wriggly little tail, and its body was an awfully bright pink. Over its head was an angel's halo, and from its back grew shriveled, featherless wings. Its whole body measured about 3 feet across, making its way over. "What's that?" Demiurge answered Aura's question. "It's the guardian of the 8th level, Victim." "It is?" Shalltear chimed in. Victim arrived at Lemegeton and spun around. Cocytus understood that it was taking in the area. Victim didn't have a neck, so if it wanted to look around, it needed to move its entire body. "Aster lime clay ash, teal orange violet grape orange eggshell, gray jonquil orange, ivory, cinnabar scarlet flesh eggshell scarlet purple eggshell crimson." "How do you do, everyone? I'm Victim." Unfazed by the strange language, Demiurge replied as a representative of the group. "Good of you to come, Victim. My name is Demiurge, and I will be standing in for Albedo as representative." "Fuchsia scarlet ash crimson a clay grape, ebony cream chestnut silk, orange eggshell, chestnut cream grape crimson." I heard from Lord Ainz. Then it turned its body around to look at everyone. "Aster lime clay grape, evergreen chestnut lime grape madder, thistle, chestnut silk orange eggshell, chestnut cream grape crimson, evergreen eggshell, orange ebony siboney ivory scarlet, teal madder ash cream ebony clay brown eggshell, scarlet jonquil silk grape crimson." I've also heard all your names, so introductions won't be necessary. I see. Well, we're all here now, so first I'll tell you how to line up. Everyone listened to Demiurge's explanation in earnest. They were about to have an audience with the leader of the supreme beings inside the heart of the great tomb of Nazarick. If there were any mistakes, the only way to apologize was probably with one's life. After Demiurge had said what he needed to, he waited just enough time for everyone to digest it, and then led the guardians and minions into the throne room. Entering this space, which he had visited only a handful of times, caused joy to well up in Cocytus's heart. Its magnificent construction, the flags representing each of the supreme beings, the world item all the way in the back, it was a room worthy of being the heart of Nazarick. He was so enthralled he forgot, if for only a moment, the flames slowly roasting his heart. The guardians left the minions behind part way and lined up at the foot of the stairs leading to the throne. After that, they saluted the Ainz Guild crest against the wall to express their adoration and loyalty. Then they dropped to one knee, bowed their heads, and waited until their master arrived. Before long, along with the solemn sound of the opening door, came a pair of footsteps. They knew without even turning around that it was decidedly not their master. It was unthinkable that the master of the great tomb of Nazarick would appear unaccompanied. "The highest ruler of the great tomb of Nazarick, Lord Ainz, and captain of the floor guardians, Mistress Albedo." The voice belonged to one of the Pleiades, Yuri Alpha. The door sounded again, along with the frigid clack of boots on the floor and the tapping of a staff, followed a little later by the sound of high heels. It was normal to show respect when one's master entered the room, but no one gathered here did anything. Why? Because they were already showing all the respect that was possible. Only Cocytus did something different. A certain thought occupying his mind ended up expressed as movement. It was a truly tiny motion, but it disrupted the atmosphere in a huge way. He detected, with a skill, the other guardians focusing on him. Walking behind their master, Albedo radiated a rage she failed to suppress despite her best efforts. But, as could be expected in this situation, no one uttered a word. The footsteps moved slowly past the line of guardians and up the stairs. There came the sound of someone sitting on the throne, and Albedo's voice rang out. "Raise your heads and bask in the authority of Lord Ainz. Then came the shuffling of everyone moving at once to attend to their master seated on the throne. Cocytus also raised his head immediately. Gripping the staff that proved he was ruler of the land, enveloped in a horrifying aura with a black halo behind his head, this was the highest ruler of the great tomb of Nazarick, Ainz. Standing in front of him, Albedo observed each of the guardians below, including Cocytus, nodded in satisfaction, and turned to Ainz. "The floor guardians of the great tomb of Nazarick bow before you, O Supreme One. Your wish is our command." He uttered a dignified, and struck the floor hard with his staff. As all eyes gathered on him, he slowly opened his mouth to speak.
"How good of you to gather before me, floor guardians. First, a word of thanks. Demiurge."
"My lord."
"Allow me to thank you for your unceasing efforts. I'm grateful for your loyalty."
"Oh, what are you saying, Lord Ainz? I am your servant. It is only natural that I should come when you call. Your thanks are too precious to bestow upon me." Demiurge bowed his head low, his face trembling with delight.
"I see. And do you have any evidence of suspicious scum showing up around here?"
"None, my lord. We are taking ample precautions, and should be able to discover them easily should they approach."
"I guess that's all we can do. But don't neglect the watch. They may employ methods we haven't considered. And about the skins you brought, the head librarian has concluded that they can withstand being made into low-level scrolls. Is it possible to secure a ready supply of them?"
"Yes, that will be no problem. We have captured a sufficient number."
"Aha! And what was the name of the beast you're using?"
"Beast? Oh, they're the ones you mentioned, Lord Ainz." Demiurge was vague for a moment, and then answered, "The bipedal sheep of the sacred kingdom. How about we call them Abelian sheep?" Cocytus wondered at Demiurge's tone. He seemed to be having an awful lot of fun. In general, Demiurge was good-natured and nice to everyone, but that kindness extended only to those created by the supreme beings. To anyone else, he was extremely cruel. Glimpses of brutality were visible beneath his high spirits. The dark malice was surely directed at the beasts he was talking about, but would Demiurge really hold such an attitude towards beings of lesser intelligence? Considering his personality, Cocytus found it a bit strange, but this wasn't the time or place to ask about it.
"I see. Sheep."
Their master smiled faintly, and drawn by his words, Albedo and Demiurge followed suit.
"Goats might be better, but that's fine. Then please skin those sheep. Is there any possibility of ecosystem issues due to overhunting?"
"I don't believe so. Since we use healing magic, we can skin them right away, and unless we're mass-producing them, there's no need to gather a large number. This is thanks to those exceedingly brilliant monsters, the Tortures."
Don't the severed parts disappear if you cast healing magic?
About that, we learned something during our healing experiments. If the severed part changes dramatically from its original state before the healing magic is cast, say it gets minced, then it will remain unaffected by magic. In other words, if we remove the skin and begin processing, it seems to count as a separate entity and will not disappear, even if we cast healing magic. Apparently, this is also the reason the sheep don't die if we feed them their own harvested meat. As an aside, it seems that if the healer, or healee, refuses the healing, the magic doesn't work as well, and the wound remains. It also depends on the tier of the spell used, and the amount of time that passes before casting.
I see. Goes to show how great the power of magic is. Good. Then continue as you were.
Yes, sir. From now on, we'll separate the skins by sex and age when we send them, so please let me know what age produces the best quality.
I think I'll leave that up to the librarian. Next, victim.
Teal scarlet, fuchsia scarlet, ash crimson, clay grape. Yes, Lord Ainz.
I've called you for the reason you're thinking. Something unimaginable has happened, and we need to use your skill to protect the Guardians and me as well. Sorry. I'll resurrect you right away, so I hope you'll forgive me.
Eggshell, aster, cinnabar, porcelain, peach, crimson. Thistle, scarlet, ochre, eggshell. Chestnut, cream, grape, crimson, orange, jonquil. Ivory, chestnut, silk. Grass. Clay, opal, crimson. Grass. Fuchsia, scarlet, ash, crimson, clay, grape. Gray, jonquil, orange. Thistle, fuchsia, scarlet, ash, crimson, clay, grape. Evergreen, orange, thistle, indigo. Umber, opal, grass. Orange, seaweed, jonquil, violet. Grass, cinnabar, aster, jonquil, clay, opal, jonquil, evergreen, eggshell, crimson. Umber, evergreen, yellow, ivory, white, eggshell. Orange, peach, cinnabar, evergreen, chestnut, ash, ivory, jonquil, evergreen, chestnut, black, flesh. Grass, jonquil, eggshell, porcelain, evergreen, eggshell, fuchsia, opal, teal, peach, opal. Scarlet, orange, ebony, cinnabar, evergreen, ebony, snow, peach, green, teal, fuchsia, cream, grape, brown, ash. Demiurge mentioned that as well. Please don't trouble yourself about it, Lord Ainz. I, too, am your minion, and I was born to die. Therefore, there is no greater happiness than to be of use to a supreme one with my power.
I see. Forgive me.
When their master bowed in apology, Victim gasped in surprise and wriggled this way and that. Thistle, ochre, jonquil, scarlet, lime, scarlet. I'm not worthy.
There may come a time we need to kill you in order to prevent our enemy's escape. Please accept it. We do not take this action out of hatred. I don't want to hurt you, one of our precious children. But if we leave these unknown enemies alone for too long, things might end up far worse. That was why... Limegrass, thistle, chestnut, ochre, orange, black, white, lime, scarlet, eggshell, flesh, jonquil, clay, scarlet, fuchsia, scarlet, ash, crimson, clay, grape, chestnut, silk, thistle, yellow, teal, orange, licorice, cinnabar, blue, ash, grass, cream, ivory, scarlet, orange, eggshell, chestnut, cream, grape, crimson. Please, say no more, Lord Ainz. I understand your feelings quite well. One of the gimmicks in Nazarick uses these words from the Gospel. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. They are truly fitting words for you. I thank you for your love.
Ainz's attention moved from Victim, who had assumed a posture of deep devotion, to another guardian.
Next, Shalltear.
She must not have been expecting to get called, and her voice was terribly shrill when she answered. My lord, sir!
Come to me.
He hadn't said anything like this to the other guardians. Startled, she hurriedly got to her feet. Her anxiety was clear from the tension in her back, like a condemned criminal being led to the guillotine, but her spine was straight, reflecting the honor she sought. Upon ascending the stairs, she immediately dropped to one knee a short distance from the throne.
Shalltear, regarding the thorn pricking your heart.
Understanding what he meant immediately, she oozed remorse.
Oh, Lord Ainz, I beg you, please discipline me for that shameful affair. Give me punishment befitting the foolish guilty one who, despite holding the position of guardian, committed such a loathsome act.
Shalltear's pained voice echoed throughout the throne room. Cocytus could understand how she felt. No, any guardian, anyone created by the supreme beings could. Even if she had been manipulated, she couldn't forgive herself for acting hostile toward a supreme being.
I see. Then come here, Shalltear.
Obeying his wave, Shalltear inclined toward the throne. A bony hand stretched out to her hung head and gently pet it. She ever so timidly looked up, and everyone heard her quiet, astonished voice.
Lord Ainz?
The mistake was mine, and we were far too disadvantaged by our opponent having a world item. Shalltear, I love all who serve Nazarick, all whom we created from nothing. That includes you, naturally. Are you, precious, blameless Shalltear, going to force me to punish you?
Her eyes said she didn't know what to do. Cocytus didn't know what he was looking at, though. His mouth moved slightly. His master's face was all bone with no lips, so Cocytus couldn't guess what he'd said, but it was probably someone's name.
Oh, Lord Ainz, you speak of love?
Shalltear's swooning voice rang out. Cocytus couldn't see her face because he was behind her, but her behavior told him all he needed to know. She sounded like she was crying, and her shoulders trembled. He saw their master stroke her face with his other hand. In it he held a white handkerchief.
There, Shalltear. Don't cry. All your beauty will go to waste, you know.
Without a word, she pressed the back of Ainz's hand that had been running through her hair to her face, probably to her lips. Mare sobbed, and then Aura. Demiurge was also dabbing at his eyes. Jealous of those who could shed even a few tears, Cocytus watched as his comrade pledged her loyalty once more. What Shalltear had feared most was that because she wasn't useful, because she had caused trouble, because she'd abandoned her oaths, that the kind, last remaining supreme being in the land would disown her. But he had obliterated her worries with the word love. How great was her joy! Cocytus, in the same position as her, no, worse, stood silently behind her, watching in envy.
Okay, Shalltear, you're dismissed.
Lord Ainz!
A cold voice cut their master short. Cocytus glared at Albedo, offended by her rude conduct. Something was off. An unidentifiable uneasiness flitted across his mind.
Clear rewards and punishment keep all in order. Perhaps it would be best if you punished her.
Albedo, you have some issue with...
He closed his mouth. Ainz must have paused due to something Cocytus didn't understand, but what settled things was another word from Shalltear.
Lord Ainz, I agree with Albedo. I beg you, please punish me. It will be a joy to be able to prove my devotion.
Okay, I'll decide later what to do and punish you. You're dismissed.
Yes, Lord Ainz.
Her eyes were always red, but now they were bloodshot as well. She descended the stairs, and back in her previous position, she assumed the most humble posture possible. And then...
Cocytus, Lord Ainz has something to say to you. Please listen.
The air was tense. The moment had finally arrived. Cocytus bowed his head deeply. His posture, from which he could see nothing but the floor, was appropriate for an audience, but he remained in it because he lacked the courage to gaze upon his master's face.
I saw the battle with the Lizardmen, Cocytus. My lord! It ended in defeat, didn't it?
Sir, my humble apologies for this error.
A sharp strike of a staff on the floor cut off Cocytus's apology. Albedo's icy voice vibrated in his ears.
Isn't that rude, Cocytus? If you're going to apologize, raise your head.
Do pardon me.
He lifted his head to see his master seated on the throne at the top of the stairs.
Cocytus, let's hear from the general of the defeated army. How did it feel to be in command this time, instead of fighting on the front lines?
My lord, my humble apologies for losing the soldiers you gave me, as well as the Elder Lich commander you created.
Oh, I can make any number of those, so it's fine to lose them. Don't worry about that. What I'm asking you, Cocytus, is what it was like to lead an army. I'll say this first. I have no intention of blaming you terribly much for this defeat.
The atmosphere among the Guardians and the minions behind them was one of bewilderment, excepting Demiurge and Albedo.
So the things Demiurge was saying were...
Sensing his master was about to continue speaking, he hurriedly shifted his attention.
Everyone fails sometimes, even me.
Disbelief hung faintly in the air. There was no way the supreme being Ainz could fail, and in fact, he never had. In short, such a claim was only to comfort Cocytus.
All that matters is what you gained from the experience. Cocytus, let me rephrase the question. How could you have won?
Cocytus fell into silent thought. He knew now what he could have done to win. He voiced one of his faults.
I underestimated the Lizardmen. I should have proceeded more cautiously.
You are correct. No matter how weak an opponent may seem, you should never make light of them. I should have had Narbril watch this fight. What else?
I think perhaps we lacked information. We didn't know their strengths or the lay of the land within their territory. I learned that when things like that are unclear, the chances of winning will inevitably be low. What else? We also didn't have enough commanders. We were using low-tier undead, so we should have attached a commander who could give them orders according to the situation. Also, considering the Lizardmen's weapons, we should have mainly used zombies to tire them out, or used all our troops together instead of separately.
And besides that?
My apologies. That's all I can come up with at the moment.
No, that makes sense. Well done. Of course, I can think of some other things, but you have learned well enough, Cocytus. Really, I wanted you to discover these things on your own, without being asked. But I suppose this is acceptable. Now then, why didn't you choose these courses of action from the start?
I hadn't thought of them. I believed we could simply keep pushing.
I see. So when the undead all died, you realized some things? Good. If you strive not to fail again, then this will have been a meaningful defeat.
Cocytus had the feeling his master smiled a bit.
There are many types of failures, but yours is not a critical one. Besides the Elder Lich, all those undead were auto-spawning monsters. Losing them doesn't affect Nazarick at all. And the fact that the Guardians have learned not to repeat these mistakes is a bonus.
Thank you, Lord Ainz.
That said, it's true that you were defeated, so I will have you accept punishment like Shalltear.
There his words cut off, and Cocytus waited to see what his punishment would be. The brief silence did make him a little anxious, but a weight had been lifted from Cocytus, knowing in his heart that his master hadn't lost hope in him. However, the next thing he said made Cocytus stiffen.
Honestly, I thought I'd take you off this operation, but this is a better idea. Cocytus, wipe away the filth of this defeat with your own hands. Exterminate the Lizardmen, this time without anyone's help.
If they killed all the Lizardmen so that no word of the battle got out, it would be as if Nazarick had never been defeated in the first place. Someone who scorned those who lived outside Nazarick as lower life forms would be delighted to set about perpetrating this atrocity. Up until now, Cocytus would have taken the order without hesitation too, but Cocytus trembled, because he knew what it meant to do what he was about to do. He breathed in and out a few times. As everyone wondered why he hadn't accepted the order, he spoke.
Lord Ainz, there is something I would like to ask of you.
The world stopped. He felt the attention of a few stabbing into him. Cocytus, a guardian at the peak of power and strength within Nazarick, who could count on one hand those as strong or stronger than him, was assaulted by chills so violent he shivered. Regret crashed down upon him like an avalanche, but it was too late. Now that he'd said something, he couldn't take it back. With his multiple compound eyes, Cocytus had an extremely wide field of vision. His only saving grace now was that because he was facing the ground, he couldn't see his master's face. If he had looked enraged or displeased, Cocytus wouldn't have been able to do anything.
I beg you, Lord Ainz.
It was not their master, but someone else who interrupted.
You fool!
Albedo rebuked him with an ear-splitting scream, a voice appropriate for the captain of the Floor Guardians. Cocytus was petrified, trembling like a child scolded by his mother.
You dare petition Lord Ainz despite being the one who brought defeat to Nazarick! Know your place!
Cocytus didn't speak, but kept his head bowed, hoping for consent from their master, even as Albedo battered him harder with her rage.
Back down!
But Albedo's shout vanished part way, giving way to the quiet voice of one man.
That's enough, Albedo.
She gasped, and their master repeated the words again to soothe her.
Raise your head, Cocytus. Why don't you let me hear what it is you want to ask?
It was a quiet voice containing no apparent anger. That was precisely why it was terrifying. The fear resembled the feeling of being swallowed up while peering into an impossibly clear lake. Cocytus had gear to protect him from the psychic effects of fear from external sources. The emotions assaulting him now came from inside. Swallowing hard, not spit, but venom to be exact, Cocytus raised his head and looked his master in the face. The flames in his vacant orbits were a slightly vivid red.
Once again, will you let me hear what it is you want to ask?
Cocytus's voice wouldn't come out. He tried over and over, but his throat was tight and he couldn't utter a single word.
What's wrong, Cocytus?
A heavy silence weighed him down.
I'm not mad or anything, you know. I just want to know what you're thinking, what you want to say.
His tone held the kindness one used when asking a clammed-up child. Responding to that push, Cocytus said,
I'm against killing all the Lizardmen. I beg you, please have mercy.
When he'd finished speaking, he thought he felt the air in the room shift. No, it had shifted. The biggest reaction was from straight ahead, Albedo's murderous glare. The other guardians were shaken, although Demiurge and their master were tranquil. He sensed something from them.
Cocytus, do you know what you're saying?
Albedo's icy voice, transformed by killing intent, was enough to make even chill-resistant Cocytus shiver.
Lord Ainz ordered you to exterminate the Lizardmen as punishment, that you would raise an objection to it. Guardian of the 5th level, Cocytus, could it be that you're frightened of the Lizardmen?
Her voice was mocking, but Cocytus had no response. Albedo's attitude was correct. If their positions had been reversed, Cocytus would probably have been similarly irritated.
How about you say something?
What cut off her words wasn't a voice, but a sound. The sharp strike of a staff on the floor.
Quiet, Albedo. I'm asking Cocytus. Don't interfere.
Excuse me, my lord. Please forgive me.
Albedo bowed and returned to her previous position. Their master's gaze returned to Cocytus, serious and practically boring a hole through him. It was impossible to read his master's emotions. He could have been completely furious, or just curious.
Now then, Cocytus, you must have a reason for saying what you just said. Some kind of benefit to the great tomb of Nazarick? Tell me. My lord, there is potential that in the future these Lizardmen will produce robust warriors. I think that perhaps killing them all now would be a waste when powerful Lizardmen are born. It would be a benefit to instill in them a loyalty toward Nazarick and make them our followers. Your proposal does make some sense. In the end, undead from Lizardman corpses weren't any stronger than the ones made using human corpses. If we can make arrangements to collect corpses buried in Erantel's graveyard, there's no reason to insist on using Lizardmen.
Cocytus was about to say, then, but he realized their master wasn't finished speaking. He had a bad feeling, and then his fear was confirmed.
However, it's more cost-effective to use the undead I create with corpses than live Lizardmen. Loyalty requires trust. Undead don't rack up food and drink costs. The only pro I can think of for using Lizardmen is that their numbers will increase. And even then, we'd have to think about the long-term implications. Let me know if you think I'm missing something. Anything you think would make sense to me.
Their merciful master would grant his wish as long as he was convinced, but Cocytus couldn't come up with anything. He'd always seen himself as a weapon for his master to wield. Because of that, because he'd never thought for himself, he couldn't explain his own thoughts well. He hadn't considered how they, as an organization, could benefit. And what he was being asked really boiled down to one thing. What was in it for the Great Tomb of Nazarick? The reason Cocytus didn't want to kill the Lizardmen was because one had attracted his interest. As a warrior, it was a personal emotion, definitely not a utilitarian motive based on seeing the bigger picture. Cocytus panicked. If their master, quietly watching him, became impatient or bothered, this miraculous question would lose all meaning. All that would be left was the standing order to exterminate the Lizardmen. He desperately racked his brain. Still, he had no answer.
What's the matter, Cocytus? You don't have anything? If not, you should be fine with exterminating them, yes?
The question was repeated. Nothing came to mind. Cocytus had nothing to say, and his mind was just spinning its wheels. A murmur echoed loudly in the silent throne room.
I see. That's too bad.
Just as the weight of the words "too bad" threatened to crush Cocytus, a quiet voice handed him a lifeline.
Lord Ainz, please forgive the intrusion. What is it, Demiurge? You have something to say? Yes. Regarding your earlier decision, I wonder if you would consider entertaining a humble plan of mine. Let's hear it. My lord, Lord Ainz, you're well aware of our need to conduct experiments. What if we experimented on the Lizardmen? Oh, that's an interesting idea.
Their master leaned forward out of the throne, and for just a split second Cocytus felt his crimson eyes on him.
Indeed, we don't know what Nazaric's future will be, but there may come a time when we need to combine and lead forces. We may need to conquer a country someday. At that point in time, whether we've performed experiments in governance or not may have a huge impact on how successful we are.
Demiurge further straightened his posture and gave his conclusion, looking squarely at their master on the throne.
I humbly suggest that we conquer the Lizardman village and experiment with governing in a way that does not employ fear.
The staff struck the floor, and the sharp clack echoed throughout the room.
A magnificent proposal, Demiurge.
Thank you.
Very well. I will take Demiurge's advice and change the Lizardman group's fate from extermination to occupation. Anyone with an objection, raise your hand and speak.
He cast his flickering crimson gaze across the Guardians.
It seems there are no objections. Then it's decided.
Everyone bowed in acknowledgement.
But Demiurge, what a great idea. I'm impressed.
Demiurge smiled.
What are you saying, Lord Ainz? Surely you had already come up with it. You were waiting for Cocytus, weren't you?
He replied with an awkward smile rather than words, but that said it all. Cocytus felt all the strength leave his body. He had commanded Nazaric's glorious army, lost, and then objected to his master's opinion without a counterproposal. What did that make him? It made him
incompetent. I am utterly incompetent. No, that's not true, Demiurge. You're thinking too highly of me. What I wanted was an original idea, no matter what it was.
His eyes moved again and stopped the longest on Cocytus. Realizing what it meant, he felt deeply ashamed, but he couldn't look down.
You need to prioritize intention. Determine the intent and take the most appropriate course of action. Listen, Guardians. This won't work if you just blindly follow orders. You need to think a little first. Think about what will benefit Nazarick the most. If you believe an order is mistaken, or that there's a more efficient way to do things, then present that to me or whoever made the proposal. Now then, Cocytus, let's return to our previous topic. I said I would punish you, right? Yes, you said to kill all the Lizardmen. I did. But now, instead of killing them, we're going to govern them. Therefore, your punishment has also changed. Govern the Lizardmen, and instill in them a loyalty toward Nazarick. Rule by fear is strictly prohibited. We want this to be a case study.
This was a huge role that Cocytus, no, probably none of the Guardians besides Demiurge, had ever filled before. For just a split second, the words, "It's too hard for me," appeared in Cocytus's mind, but there was no way he could say something so pathetic. Neither to their generous absolute ruler, to whom he owed his loyalty, nor to his comrade, who had rescued him from a difficult situation.
Understood. I'm nervous about many things, so I ask for your support. Of course. Materials, food, personnel. I'm sure you'll need many things. Nazarick will provide them. Thank you. I promise to perform in a way that lives up to the mercy you have shown me.
Cocytus shouted from the bottom of his heart.
Good. Then I order all Guardians to arrange a sortie. We need a feint, and to show them that what they've seen so far is not the true power of Nazarick. Of course, if it will cause obstacles in governing the Lizardmen after the fact, we don't have to do it, Cocytus.
Cocytus thought it over before replying.
I don't believe there will be any issues. I see. Guardians, prepare for departure.
All the guardians present called out their acknowledgment in unison.
Albedo, I'm going as well. Prepare the soldiers.
Understood. Should I assume that there are those who enjoy spying among our enemy and choose personnel who will cause a misunderstanding?
Exactly. But don't forget, we also have to awe them into submission.
Then, perhaps, an army with Nazaric old guarders as the linchpin would be attractive.
Cocytus agreed silently with her reply. There was a type of undead guard called an Old Guarder. Nazaric Old Guarders were an elite undead found only in Nazaric. They were brilliant, proficient in a number of combat skills, and had weapons enchanted with all sorts of effects, as well as magic armor and shields.
That's fine. How many do you need?
3,000.
That's not very many. That might not overwhelm them enough. These guys beat us and probably underestimate us now. We have to terrify them. It's no fun if we send fewer than last time. I want to double that. Anything else you need?
Then how about also mobilizing the Nazaric Elder Guarders and Nazaric Master Guarders? Then we'll have 6,000.
In response to Albedo's smooth answer befitting her position as captain, Ainz was clear and concise.
Great. And is there any issue with activating Gargantua?
No, Lord Ainz. He's fully mobile.
Then Shalltear, use gate to transport our troops all at once.
I may not have enough magical energy on my own.
Get support from Pistonia. Have her transfer some energy. If that's still not enough, get some from Lupus Regina.
Understood.
Next, have Nigrido's and Pandora's actors' security net focused on us. That will loosen up the coverage on Sebas's crew, but we'll just have to up the physical surveillance. Good. Move out, everybody. Tomorrow, we'll show the Lizardmen the power of the great tomb of Nazaric.